Hey guys, this is Carrie, and in this video we're going to be wrapping up our game project by adding some bad guys so that the game is a little bit more challenging. So I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to start a bad guy section. So I guess I'll do that after the score. My auto indent is weirdly calibrated right now on Replit, so bad guy section. Alright, so taking an idea from our food, it was easiest when we were able to group the foods in a list together so that we could use a for each loop to control all of them. We're also going to make a list of bad guys, and I'm going to say let baddies, which will be the group of all the bad guys, equal an empty list. And what I'm going to do is very similar to our food function, where we had a create food. I'm going to make a create bad guy function. So here we go, function, create bad guy. All right, and so for my bad guys, I'm going to want them to actually move across the screen. So instead of just generating an X and Y coordinate for a bad guy to be at, I'm also going to generate a couple of speeds. I'm going to say let X speed equal generate random from, let's go from -3 to 3. And I'm going to say let Y speed be the same. Then my new bad guy, instead of new food, is going to be the random X and Y coordinates that I created, the random speed, and the random Y speed. So I'm just going to keep track that my bad guy will have this format. And what we're doing here is we're using the same trick that we used with the player and with the food, where we're representing them programmatically as a list of important values. And then drawing them as circles will be a separate function where we use these values to draw them as circles. The last part of my create bad guy function is I don't want to append to the foods list anymore. I want to append to the baddies list. So I'm going to put the new bad guy in that list. Okay, so when we make new bad guys, they should appear here. So let's start the game with 2 bad guys. So I'm going to say create bad guy once, and I hate the indent right now, create bad guy again. And that should add 2 bad guys to this list. So let me refresh my screen and see if they appear. They don't appear, which is what I was expecting, because we haven't defined how to draw the bad guys. And we haven't put that inside of our loop here. So in order to make sure my baddies list is working as I expected, I'm going to type it into the console, and I can see that inside of this list, I have 2 smaller arrays, and so this is where the bad guys are, as well as their speeds. So next up, I'm going to write a function very similar to the one from the food. And this is going to be, I'm going to actually do 2 functions. I'm going to take the draw food and the draw all foods function. And I'm going to copy and paste those down here. So below creating a bad guy, I also don't want the auto indent. I want to be able to draw a bad guy. And that's going to take in 1 bad guy info. And so the X coordinate is going to be the 0th part of that list. The Y coordinate will be the 1th part of that list. My bad guys are not going to be red. I'm going to make them cannonballs, so they will be black, and they'll be shooting across the screen, and I'll have to dodge them. And then I'm going to keep them as circles, but I'm going to make them a little bit tinier because I don't want to get hit. So I'm making the radius a bit smaller. Now for our draw all foods function, I'm going to redefine this to be draw baddies, and I'll use a capital B for the camel case. So we'll draw all of the baddies from this list. and we're going to take in the entire list here. So we're going to go through that list, and we'll go bad guy by bad guy. So we'll take that first bad guy from the list, and then we're going to draw, instead of food, we're going to draw a bad guy using that bad guy info. And if I just write the functions like this, I've defined those functions, but I need to make sure in my game loop that every time through the loop, we're drawing the locations of all of those bad guys. So I'm going to put this down here, draw all baddies, and it will take in that entire list of bad guys. All right, so now they should be appearing on the screen, and there should be 2 of them. Uh-oh, food info is not defined. I forgot to change something. Let's see. Oh, right here in the X and Y coordinates of draw bad guy, these should say bad guy info. So let me copy that from here and replace that here and here. I'm also going to change the word food here to bad guy graphics. And I'm going to change this one here as well to bad guy. It's a little bit confusing when you copy and paste, right? If you don't change it in all of the spots, then it gets confusing. But here we go. I've got 800 errors. Okay, now I don't. So all the errors get fixed. Okay, I don't want to scroll here. I want to scroll over here. So I can run around. The problem is that my bad guys aren't moving, and if I go to touch them, I don't die. So to make things a little bit more exciting here, we need to define an update bad guy function. So I'm going to base this very strongly off of the update all foods function. So I'm going to scroll from the bottom parenthesis here, and let me just pull this to the side so it's a little bit easier to see where everything lines up. I'm going to take this and I'm going to say, take the whole update food function from the beginning of the definition down to this bottom parenthesis there. And I am going to paste that down here. Now, I'm going to have to change a lot of these words from foods to bad guy or baddies. So I'm going to take that list. Oops. And I'm also going to need the player info here because I'm going to have to make sure that as part of my updating the bad guys function, I can tell if I'm colliding with the bad guy, because then I should get a game over. So let me see if I can do that. So update all baddies, takes in the baddies list and the player info. Let player x equal player info 0. Okay, so we get the player's coordinates. But I think before I do this, bad guys have a little bit of a different functionality, which is they need to move. So what I'm going to think is I want all of the bad guys to move. So I'm going to say go into that list of all of them, and for each one of them, take the bad guy that we're currently up to, and make its x coordinate equal to the old x coordinate plus the speed, which was in, I think, the second position. Let me see. 0, 1, 2. Yeah, the x speed is in the second position. Also take that bad guy and make the bad guy's 1th coordinate, the y coordinate, equal to the old y coordinate plus the y speed. So now the bad guys should be moving after I do that. Next up, I get the player info. I'm going to keep track. Do I need to keep track? No, there's no way for me to get rid of the bad guys from the screen, so I don't need to keep track. I'm going to get rid of the current food thing. I'll get rid of this, or hold up, I'm getting a little bit carried away here. Let me just change this stuff. This is going to be the whole list with all the bad guys. For each bad guy, we're going to get the bad guy x coordinate, and that's going to come from the 0th spot in the list of data about the bad guy right here. The next one, we're going to get the bad guy's y coordinate, and that's going to be bad guy 1. Now we need to get the distance between the player and the bad guy. So I'm going to do that. Oop, too many deletes. And if our distance is too low, we're going to want to cause the game over. So let me see how I would change this function here. Well, first off, because the bad guys are a little bit smaller, I'm going to make the collision radius less than 70. I'm going to try out 60, since these guys are a little bit smaller. I might need to do 65. We'll have to experiment with that. I no longer need to eat any food, because I'm colliding with the bad guys. I no longer need to create a food item, because I'm not making new food when I get eaten by the bad guy. And I don't need to update the score, so all of this is actually stuff I can get rid of. I'm also going to get rid of this current food equals current food plus 1, because we get deleted the current food value here. I think the only thing that needs to be happening if I hit a bad guy, if my distance is less than 60 from a bad guy, is I get a game over. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by saying clear interval, game loop. And that should take this game loop here, and it should clear the interval if I'm too close. All right, so let's see. Update player, update all foods, draw player, draw all foods, draw all baddies, display score. I'm going to put my update all baddies function here. And I'm going to take in the list of all of the bad guys, and I'm going to also have the player info. So now what should happen, yeah, they're moving, which is great. All right, let me see if, oh, they move off the screen. So what I need to do now is I need to make sure they don't move off the screen. And I had a similar problem with my player before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually copy from my player conditions the X and Y conditions, so that if the bad guys crawl off the screen in the X or Y direction, they get all updated. So let me put that here. So in this part of the for each loop, we were updating their X and Y positions. I'm going to highlight these and tab them over. And I'm going to replace all of the word player here from player info. Oh, actually, I'm going to replace all of the player info itself with the word bad guy. So let me highlight all of those by highlighting one and then pressing Command D until just the last one is highlighted. And now I changed all of those. All right, so now my bad guys should stick around a little bit longer. Let's see. Okay, yeah, awesome. They pop off and then they come back. And if I hit one of them, okay, I get a game over, which is awesome. So I have a couple of things left that I can do. I can make a game over screen, and then I can also, I think, make it so that whenever I eat a new piece of food, it creates a new bad guy. So let's do that. So in my update food function, or update all foods function, yeah, I'm going to make it so that if my distance is less than 70, if I'm eating the food, I do all of this, and then I also create a new bad guy. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it so that every time I get a food, it creates a new bad guy. Now, I think that I accidentally refreshed mine, but I had an interesting error that's going to be pretty rare, but I want to see if I can make it trigger again. Ah, there we go. So I have a bad guy right now who is not moving at all. And what that means is it means that his X and Y coordinates are in the exact same, or sorry, not his X and Y coordinates. His X and Y speeds are 0 each. So I don't want to have any stationary bad guys. So to fix that, and I actually just had another awesome error to worry about. So I'm going to fix both of those errors because they're very similar. So to fix the speed error where they're both 0, I'm going to improve my update bad guy function. Not update bad guy, my create bad guy function. So what I'm going to say here is let X and Y be those random coordinates. Let the X and Y speeds be these random coordinates. But I want to say, as long as the X speed and the Y speed are both equal to 0, I want to recreate these coordinates. or recreate these speeds, because what that will mean is if they're both 0, then it will keep recreating new speeds until they're both not 0. So it's very rare that they'd both be 0. It's like a 1 out of 7 times 1 out of 7 probability. But this way, we don't run into that problem. I also really don't like this gotcha moment that I had at the end, where this bad guy appeared right next to me. So I'm going to do something really similar there, which is, for my x and y coordinates, I'm going to say, okay, let me see. This one's going to take a little bit more work, so let me finish setting up my well loop. I'm going to say that, well, the distance between my player and the new bad guy is like, if they're too close, I want to create new x and y coordinates that doesn't actually appear there. So I'm going to say, well, the distance is less than, let's see, collision is 60, so maybe I'll do less than 110. Let me generate new x and y coordinates. So x will be another random number between 0 and 800, and y will be another random number between 0 and 600. And what that will do is I will be able to guarantee that the distance between my player and one of the new bad guys is at least 110 pixels, so that I don't die immediately after it appears on top of me. However, I need to actually calculate this distance. So I'm going to say let distance equal get distance between the 0th player info, the player's x coordinate. Oops, and that's player info, not player. The player's y coordinate, the first position, and these x and y values that I generated there. Lastly, I'm going to need to actually recalculate the distance every time that I do this, since my conditional statement has to do with the distance itself. So I'm going to say, find a new x and y value. It was too close. And then recalculate the distance. And you'll notice that I'm not using lets here because I don't want to create new variables. I want to replace these x and y coordinates and this distance here. All right, so now I think I've been able to avoid these traps. So all of the bad guys should appear further away from me, and at the same time, all of them should have speeds that are non-zero. Now I can tweak things a little bit in this game. Maybe we want the player to move a little bit faster. So you can speed things up like by changing the frame rate here from 25. You can also change the player speeds inside of the player info function. Wow. I think those actually come from the key presses. So we can change, we can change those speeds here to higher numbers. We can also change the bad guy speeds so they can be higher numbers as well by generating higher random numbers here. There's a lot of places that we can go with this game. And I actually think things are getting a little long here, so I'm going to not put the game over screen. And if you really want a game over screen, you can make one yourself. There's a lot of other things that you can make. You can make power-ups in this game. Maybe you can make the player have a laser so that they can destroy the cannonballs. Maybe you want to make it so that the cannonballs rain down from the sky. Maybe you want to make the food items move. There's a lot of, maybe 2 players. Maybe you'll have the player character change colors. I don't know, there's so many places my mind goes with this. And I hope you're excited to add more to the program as well. Bye, guys.